Hi.
This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slekar and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
Oh, yes, it is Wednesday. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educators amplified in the house. Teacher Hallie, Teacher Joanna. Yeah, every Wednesday we have the Educators Amplified crew here. Johnny Lupinacci's there. Johnny, right off the bat, though, you know what I was thinking? What's so awesome about Busted Pencils? You know what it is, right? It's Busted Pencils is sponsored by the Minocqua Brewing Company, who sued the state of Wisconsin to end its parasitic voucher system that hurts public schools. Minocqua Brewing Company is making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out Minocqua Brewing Company to see where you can buy their progressive beer. Just thought I'd get that out there right away, man, just to let everybody know in case they're getting ready, going, wonder where we should go tonight. Hey, if you're in the Madison area, check out the Minocqua Brewing Tap Room, and then tell them Tim and Johnny sent you, and even the Educators Amplified Teacher and Hallie and Teacher Joanna, because they've been there too, and they can surely recommend it. If you want to spend some time talking about how awesome public education is and how essential it is for democracy, then you go to the Minocqua Brewing Tap Room. Johnny Lupinacci, Teacher Joanna, Teacher Hallie, how are you all, my friends?
Doing well. Good to be here.
Hallie, kind of cutting it close there, Hallie.
I know. You like that?
Well, I love it. And I'm so excited, listener out there, if you want to give us a call, 855-752-4842, because I love Wednesdays with Educators Amplified, because I'm a tattletale today. I'm not a snitch, but I'm a tattletale. I don't know if y'all been listening, Teacher Joanna and Teacher Hallie, but Tim and Johnny have been dysregulated a lot since we last were on the air together.
Oh,
things
What's going
gotten
on?
What's happening?
Well, this is the thing. So much is going on in the world. I mean, we had the indictments break last week. That was all dysregulating. We had all kinds of discussion. So I feel like a tattletale right now. But the thing is calls have been intense. The politics are intense and things right now. And that's good because there's a lot of attacks on education. Then we've been talking about publicization on the show. This opposite of privatization. Publicization, and we had great guest on last night about that. But it got into like charters and publics and this versus that. It just always feels amped up, and it reminded me of this time of year as a teacher. Like either we are winding down, it doesn't feel like winding down, it feels totally cranked up, and then there's also teachers who are wrapping up the school year, and so kids' energies are popping off in the classrooms. And I thought, oh my God, we're gonna be getting close to Wednesday. Get Educators Amplified back on here, talk about reason and emotion and flipping the lid. And what do we got to do when we get dysregulated? So I was like, whew, we've been dysregulated on the show.
That's okay. I mean, we would tell you it's not bad. The point is to never not be dysregulated. It's to be able to flow and go with what's happening.
Exactly. So we're going to pick your brains a little bit tonight to talk a little bit more about that. Last week, you taught us about flipping our lid, and listener out there and educators, I know that was really helpful. And I know you both know that because it was helpful for your students. It was helpful for you and the people you work with. And it's just a good reminder. And then we got so ramped up one day, Jess, who's on the boards behind the scenes, but not really behind the scenes, sort of making the scenes possible. Jess had to do shape breathing with us. Not had to, I should say. I mean, she offered it and it was helpful.
She had to, Johnny. We were in bad shape, man.
Yeah. Things were dysregulated to the point where like things are fine, but it just felt like, oh my gosh, I might to get the blood pressure machine back out and check my blood pressure. And that little anger guy from the Emotions movie,
Inside Out.
Yeah, Inside Out, where his like hair goes. If I had hair, it would have been like
fire.
So just kind of, we were thinking just reviews of like, you're a teacher out there, or you're like Tim and Johnny, and you're all amped up, and it's gonna happen. Like Teacher Joanna said, you get dysregulated sometimes. It's part of the gig. But what do we do when we're like in it? What strategies, what kind of advice can you give us? Because like I am always in it.
Well, okay, there's a little bit of like zoom out and zoom in.
Mhm.
So, first of all, I do hear some maybe critical thoughts about yourself for feeling that way.
Yeah.
And so we just say right there, right, that no judgment. It's just like life is never about like not experiencing any stress or never
Mhm.
being dysregulated. It's just an awareness of where you're at. And so,
Mhm.
but I would say, oh my gosh, this radio show though is a passion
Yeah.
and something that you really should, be aware and work to have it something that generates energy for you rather than depletes. So, I don't know, being aware of those aspects. But it is hard because again, we live in like this toxic stress stew. We really do.
Mhm.
But just because you're in it doesn't mean you need to be of it. But Hallie, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you did a nice job of saying all that, and I would just say, like, "Oh, yes." Like, part of it is just like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
life. You're gonna be dysregulated sometimes, and we are not, like, the anti-dysregulation. We're more
Right.
of the, like, how can we bring more regulation into our lives because so much is dysregulating. Um, yeah, I really think that. And then I also think about just, like, we always have, like, a 0 through 10 scale,
Mm.
and 0 would be like you're a monk, like meditating for 20 million days. And 10 is like you're over the top, can handle it, going crazy, all of that. Where 5 would be, this like in between that sometimes you're feeling regulated, sometimes you're feeling dysregulated. And we would always talk with students about how we kind of want to live around the 3, 4 so that when things do come up, like what you're saying, like life is dysregulating so that you bump up to 5, 6, 7, and then can come back down. Whereas what we're seeing with students and then what you're kind of saying, or just I think average person is probably
Mhm.
living at like a 7, 8. And so if
So
you're living at a 7, 8, and then you hear the news or you're having a conversation with Tim's neighbor, you can easily get to 9, 10, maybe even
right.
above a 10, and so we're just all about the awareness more than about the, like, never go above a 5, you know?
Right.
So
We
Hallie,
don't want the thought of dysregulation to stress you out further.
I'm so stressed out because I'm stressed out.
Right.
That's me
well,
sometimes
that
though. This is
happens, that happens,
I'm
yeah.
you know what though, Hallie? I did start talking to my other neighbor, and they're
Mm.
much more calm and collected. So
Oh,
they've been.
good.
I've been sharing my time with my neighbors, though. I know
Oh, good.
Johnny, though, right? It's like, yeah, it's like I get really upset though the way you put that. Sometimes I literally get upset about being upset because
Mhm.
Mhm.
I can step back and see myself being overly agitated, overly kind of what ifing, catastrophizing, and da 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 da. And I could see it happening. And I'm like, dude, stop it. And then that makes me even more stressed because I can't stop it.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
don't
Well,
know.
a number one thing to pay attention to for myself is speed. Just speed. When
Mm.
you think of the
Mhm.
speed of your thoughts, or when you're aware that you're like thinking fast, you're talking faster, da, da, da,
Mm.
like that's a sign. And so to me, that speed just right there is like, okay, slow down.
Mhm.
Slow down. And then that might be, the shape breaths and the box breathing that Jess talked to you about was like those strategies to slow yourself down, but it's like to put space in between. So like in the workplace, I would always just remember that. Like I could pay attention and be like, what are my thoughts right now? They're really fast. You know what? I probably am not going to say anything. Or we would also notice when emails were like really long, like if an administrator or a fellow teacher wrote like this like email, we were like, "Oh my god, they're dysregulated," because
Right,
it's like
right.
and and
Yeah.
and and we're like, maybe write those, but don't press send. So I
Right?
know myself, speed is an indicator, and that's maybe
Yeah.
a helpful thought I offer to you and the audience.
Oh, I
Mhm.
love this. It already feels so helpful.
Are you regulating a little bit there, Johnny? Is what you're saying?
I think so. Co-regulating, maybe, if that's the concept of it. Like we're
Yeah.
reminding ourselves together, like, ooh, slow down. Less can sometimes mean more. And I'm reminded I had a coach, and this just came to me because what teacher Joanna is sharing here and teacher Hallie is echoing and providing, it reminds me of really good coaching. I had a coach who would look and he could he was tuned into me as a player, right? And he could say, not too high, not too low, not too
Mm.
high. And I hear it in my head. And that's reminding me
Mm.
like that's a good reminder. Like we get cranked up and it's okay because we're passionate and we're in it, but breathe or do what you need to do to slow down, not to sort of be judgmental about it or to over correcting, but to kind of find that sweet spot.
It's making me though think now we put all this because we're talking about ourselves right now, right? And
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
let's go back to, as you said, the clientele of public schools, largely children, right? Whether they're kindergartners, whether they're seniors in high school. The reality then though of that, what type of state do they come to? They come, and let's even talk academics because we typically want to push from academics, but let's go in, so we want some form of academic achievement out of our kids. If we're not taking some type of an assessment as to where they are, and Hallie, the way you kind of said that, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you've got 7 or 8 of your students starting the day at like
Mhm.
a 7 or 8, right? And
Mhm.
your response typically, and this would have been my response when I was in the classroom, would have been, can you sit down and calm down and quiet down? And if you don't, I'm going to have you down to the principal's office. Nothing about me was saying, I recognize you're dysregulated. Let me help you step it down a notch. Instead, I'm probably amping it up even more because I'm going to fix that behavior, and you're going to sit and you're going to listen to me and you're going to be calm and you're going to enjoy being in front of me. Darn it. Oh my
Mhm.
God, the things that we've done, right? It just, thinking about that. And so moving that into that direction, though. So when we come back, I want to tell you a story about a student who really was dysregulated and how a teacher could have made or break that day. Busted Pencils, Educators Amplified. Back after the break. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Joanna, you said we're in the stew.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, right? Like we're in it.
Well, that's what we talk about in general. Everyone, well, we say literally kids are who have, whose mothers experience a lot of stress, right? We say they were cooked in cortisol.
Mm.
And but I mean, but that's real, right? Like I'm thinking, oh my God, I had my children, I was pregnant in the early 2000s. If it was now, it might be
Mhm.
different,
Mm.
Mhm.
and just the stress that my body carries. But yeah, we're all kind of in it. And that's why, we think that
3
schools
seconds.
should
Aw,
recognize that and view it as part of our work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
this is great music too. You got Jess coming back for us. This is good. Yeah, I love this one. This has been great.
But were you guys okay with
5
these
seconds.
callers and stuff? Okay, never
Oh
mind.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're playing it up a little bit, but yeah, it was great. Great.
There you go. It's Busted Pencils any way you want it. Hey, you want it with Educators Amplified. Teacher Hallie, Teacher Joanna in the house. Educated educators talking education. The number's 855-752-4842. dysregulating stress, how we approach life. We kind of started the show though talking about Tim and Johnny's, dysregulation, dealing with this, dealing with that, and all of the topics we're talking about. But I as we're leaving the last segment, I said, but let's take it in back to where we say our students, and when our students present themselves, how do they present themselves? And I'll say it, an old school was a student that would have, now that I know, presented themselves as dysregulated. My technique for fixing them would have been to amp them up even more, because I would have said, you're going to stop that, you're going to sit down, or you're going to get out of here. Nothing about that. And I think about the reality. My own daughter had this one time. And you know what? Even in my household, which is typically bliss, occasionally when my daughter was in grade school, and I used to take her to school all the time because it was right down the street, and it was just this awesome thing I used to love to do, was to take her to school. One morning, my wife and I decided to not agree with each other. And we didn't agree with each other loud, kind of a slightly loud way how we didn't disagree. And then I took my daughter to school, and as I was about to let her walk out, she was in this car seat there with tears in her eyes, and she was headed into third grade with tears in her eyes to start the day, dysregulated in that sense, because in her third grade world, mom and dad were just really horrible for sending her to school that day. You know what the teacher did? And yeah, can you not send your daughter so upset to school anymore? But now look, frame that and you go, man, what a horrible. But I potentially could see, because this language and this terminology that you're giving us to talk about this, I don't see this as part of teacher preparation, of really looking at our students and making an assessment. We said, well, here's the thing, right? 25 to 28 third graders coming in the morning with lunch money, with apples, with lice, and you're doing everything you can. and so the potential that you go, my God, Slekar, can you send your daughter to school without tears already? Because I got enough going on. The teacher already, again, that dysregulated. I don't know. Make sense of that story for me, the two of you.
Well, oh gosh, a few things. One, I don't think we would have called you, because again, our setup is that we are aware of life, and we view helping to regulate children as part of our role as educators. But that's because last week, when we would, when everyone was getting their learn on about the neuroscience and the brain, we had said we know so much more now. And so the thing is, the reality is, we know about state dependence and state dependent functioning, right? And that means, at what state am I in? Am I in fight? Am I in flight? Am I calm? But schools are not aligned to what we know about that. So again, the information is here, the knowledge is here, we've got some practices, but the general setup and system is not aligned to that at all. And so you are exactly right that in most cases, um, we might schools actually add to the stress of students, right? In terms of our reactions. But then again, I don't look at the teacher as just existing in a vacuum, and I look at it as how, like, well, there's nothing about so there's kind of two planes that Hallie and I run on through Educators Amplified. And that's one about the students and how to make, school a regulating space for them. And then there's the other about working conditions for professionals, and how policy and how work is set up needs to align with that.
Well, and even how teachers are addressed,
Right.
like, I think oftentimes even kind of like how the teacher approached your daughter kind of like, "Ugh, I wish you wouldn't come to school this way." I think teachers are approached that way as well. Whether it's like they ask a question, it's like, "Why are you adversarial?" If they do something and like make a human error, it's met with, "You did something wrong, and within the policy, this is how you did this incorrectly." Like
Mhm.
everything feels much more like a microscope, which only increases dysregulation. And so I don't even look at the teacher as like, oh my God, what a bad teacher. I'm more like, wonder what dysregulated her that morning. It's just like this domino effect.
Well,
So,
sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
no, go for it.
Well, and what I was going to say is we're not really addressing the awareness we have now of how much stress schools produce. So what your story is, your little daughter came to school with the stress that was supposedly created in her home. That's really how it just is viewed in schools. It's like kids come to us with stress and then we have to deal with it.
Right.
Instead of looking at it like, wow, no, we add to it, because we operate from a place where it was like, we're assuming, yep, everybody's coming in with stress because I am too. And so now that we're here, how do we make this place accommodate that and bring it down? And what we found was within the first 30 minutes, you can really bring it down a bunch of levels through, our regulating routines and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
what are your thoughts when you hear all that?
Well, for me, it's just, again, a time and place. And it wasn't that long ago, but it was about, 10, 12 years ago when that happened to my daughter. And I don't really believe that the language and the awareness of, and you just pointed out too. So my daughter comes in, the teacher, I was kind of describing that too, when you talk about a third grade teacher's morning, collecting lunch money, taking the coats off of the kids and all that. That is a stressful situation just for anybody, or kind of getting that to go. And then what else were they doing? And so Joanna, the idea of even kind of starting the day and then saying, okay, everybody, we're here this morning. Let's kind of figure out where we all are and maybe how we can help ourselves get to a better place. That's just not something the system of schools really thinks about doing. And in fact, when you, Teacher Hallie and Teacher Joanna, talk about it, you guys I got to imagine that you're some of the very few places that did that in the classroom.
Yeah, I look at it, and right, because the model is based on everybody's regulated and everybody's, at this standard that's not even real. Where I'm like, hey, getting out the door is hard for anyone, any day,
Mhm.
anytime. Like the whole morning routine and getting to a place, there's all kinds of things that can happen along the way. And so I'm just like, when we're in this place, we're going to deal with whatever we have at this place. That level of entry is where I'm going to work with you from, kid, wherever you're coming from.
Level of entry. Oh, you're entering here at Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Yeah, Educators Amplified. Teacher Hallie, Teacher Joanna in the house. More, with our favorite two teachers when we get back in the next segment.
I don't know, have we talked before about the social discipline window? Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah, but we haven't talked about it. That'd be
Okay.
good. That'd be
That'd
another
be great.
little lesson.
Yeah, because it is too about like teachers are really trained in to and for rather than with.
Yes, that's perfect.
So we can talk about that a little bit.
Tim, when we come back, let's tee that up, and then I'll sneak in
You got to get in.
media statewide contest bit we have to do in the
Yeah.
third, fourth section.
I'll drop
Yep.
the spiel back in the
Okay.
chat since it got buried.
All right, little Green Day coming back. Nice.
Thousands of years away.
It's just when you guys talk about, like you're so much on the cutting edge of that. I just don't see the schools, the whole idea of doing like this kind of regulated assessment and go like, where are we all at? And let's see if we can bring ourselves into a better spot. Or, and some of us who are in a good spot, let us know. But the whole idea of kind of having a centering, I think right away people will be like, oh, look at this kind of new age hippie liberal crap.
Yeah, but it's actually just really like our regulating routine, which we can talk about, was really just having the same procedures in place. Like predictability is what's
Mm,
regulating. And we would talk about how, well, we can talk about it, how like usually again, people don't get too stressed out taking a shower. It's just something that's kind of automatic. You're
mhm.
doing all these things, but it just kind of like brings you to a space. And so that's how we're very intentional in having our students start their day. Um, Whatever. But it was also factors of like we did a staggered start time where they weren't arriving with the 1,500 other kids.
Mhm.
Like
Mm.
we were really intentional to um move around things that we're going to add.
So even that, I mean, you were within the system creating, and
Mhm,
I knew this, but you created your as much as you could your own system.
Oh yeah,
mhm.
we had staggered
Yeah.
start time. We were sure to always be the person at the door to greet them.
Yes.
Right, Hallie? We never
Mhm,
were
mhm,
like
mhm.
just flung open the door. We were always like, good morning, hello, hello, and
Mm.
um
Mhm.
this individual contact, and then kind of we could tell where kids were at based
Oh,
on,
yeah.
right, Hallie, how if
Oh,
could
yeah.
they follow the steps, and the steps
Yeah.
were like they would come in, put their phone in the bag, hang up their stuff, take their attendance, do their lunch order. And often they did. They'd come in, you know, being mad, having fought with their mom in the car on the way there,
Sure.
and
Sure.
Mm.
but that was part of it, kind of like just go through the routine and then, whatever. Yeah, we had a method and it worked, right, Allie?
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Oh, well, it's such.
It's just I just took that out of the what was that book we were joking about, China, that we both had? Wong.
Oh, oh yeah, the first
Oh.
days of school.
Back in a minute and a half.
Well, there were some decent things in there, but yeah, so we talk about this idea of, I mean, honestly, Tim, when you think about your story, I do think it's kind of weird that the teacher called you
Mhm.
and was, because then that's like
Well, I mean,
shaming you guys too.
I didn't add in the part that, being in a small town like that, the teacher and I knew each other, and, she took a little bit of a liberty there, but it's
But also,
still.
we're all in the stew, so are families, right? And so there's just
I know, but
moments.
was it from the whole like I'm concerned about you too, or is everything okay, or was it just like, hey, please don't send your kid in here crying?
Well, she was it was a kind of a combination of like, "Hey, what's going on with you and Michelle?" And, "Hey, it kinda makes it hard for me to teach Lacey." I
Oh,
was like,
goodness.
"Okay, well, guess what? Sometimes Lacey is gonna come in because sometimes actually too, she
30
herself
seconds.
might interpret a situation totally incorrectly."
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
mean it
she's
is. Yeah.
but no, but it was but more to me, the point was though too is and you think about that is that
15 seconds.
the over concern with her not being ready to engage in academics was kind of
Mm,
that, and again, that's the height of No
mm,
Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. It was that culture,
mm.
you
There
know.
we go.
Busted Pencils fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Wednesday night, educators amplified in the house. Teacher Joanna, teacher Hallie, talking, all the thing about, geez, where are we at when we start the day and what can we do to help ourselves be in a much better place from a regulated standpoint? No, those aren't regulations, rules. It means actually looking at the emotional state you're in. Where are you? Johnny Lupinacci, though, gotta do a little business here, right?
Oh yeah, no, I love that we are having this conversation, and especially if folks get to kind of tune in and co-regulate with us here. Just take a
Yeah.
breather and take a beat and slow down. And remember, like this time of year, especially in schools, like I like Teacher Joanna
Mhm.
was saying, like we're all in the stew. And Tim, your story too, like families are in the stew too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
how can we get into the habit, right, of having practices and routines that are about finding that middle ground, about, being at like a 5 together, right? And sometimes that may even mean, greeting our students at a 3 to 5 and helping set that tone so we can co-regulate together. Speaking of that time of year, though, Tim, civic media's got the Scotty Summer going right now. Statewide text to win contest is on. Now, listen throughout the day for a chance to hear the next code to text in for a chance to win. New keywords are announced in the 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 5 p.m., and 7 p.m. Tune in and text for a chance to win prizes that include Wisconsin Dells prize packs, Milwaukee Brewers club level tickets, plus the chance to win a Scotty Summer staycation. Chances to win every day from June 3rd through the 14th, beginning at 7 a.m. right through to the 7 p.m. hour. Be sure to download the Civic Media app in the Google Play or Apple App Store and get ready to text in your chance to win the statewide contest weekdays until Friday, June 14th. So get with it. If you want, get that text at the beginning of the hours. They drop that code, you text it in, you might win. Or just give us a call and join the conversation. We co-regulate with Teacher Joanna and Teacher Hallie. I mean, certainly Tim and Johnny need a little co-regulation from time to time. Just provided it for us last week. Teacher Joanna, at the break, and I'm sure Teacher Hallie can join this conversation part too. You were talking about asking us if we remembered. What was that concept you were talking about?
Again? Oh, the social discipline window.
That's the one, the window, the social discipline window. Give us a little mini lesson on this social discipline window, because I think it is really helpful, especially for the time of year it is right now for us teachers. Like, we're in our classrooms, things are turned up. We're having to remember, especially like Tim gave us that great story. Like, what's that social discipline window and how might that be useful for us?
Well, the social discipline window is a good tool for teachers to reflect on, as well as parents. And all it just means is kind of like how we're in relationship with students or young people. And so there's 4 parts to the, we like our quadrants, right, Hallie? There's 4 parts to our social discipline window. And one part is what's called the 2 box. And that means where it's pretty authoritarian, where you're like doing things to kids. You're like, if you do this, then I punish you like this. Then the box below that is actually, it's kitty corner to that, is the 4 box. And that's the very permissive box. That's like, oh, I see you're having trouble with this, so let me just do it for you. So those are kind of the 2 that are heavy in schools. Like, really, teacher training in school is around like the 2 box and the 4 box, because, oh my gosh, that was part of how Hallie and I balanced out our workload. I was like, these are adolescents, these are high school kids. Why am I doing all this to or for them? They could be doing it with me. And so I'll get to that. So the 2 box is very authoritarian. It's like, you're dictating to children. The 4 box is very permissive, and you're doing it for kids. Then there's another one, it's neglectful, where it's just like, you're so burnt, you're ignoring it. So you're like kind of not doing anything. And then there's the beautiful with box. And the with box is, how do you really work with the other humans that are around you? How do you work with your little, how do you work with your students? And really, that social discipline window is about power dynamics, right? It's either like it's being done to you, it's being done for you, it's not being done at all, or it can be done with you. That's my little breakdown on the social discipline window. But that came in very handy as a teacher, right? You could be like, where am I at right now? Are we doing too much for them? Are we doing this to them? How could they be doing this with? And with even being self-regulation and co-regulation. Thoughts on that little review?
It made me think about just how the system is set up, and how I would say everything is like, more or less, I was trying to think like, as a teacher, that so much is just told for us to do, like it's to us. Like, I was trying to think of like either administrators I have or any structures I've been in where it was like, let's do this together, like the with. Nope. Someone doing it for me. No. Uh, and so I more feel like it's either like to me or even probably neglect. Like they'll just not pay attention to it. Like teachers will be like, "This is going on. Hello." And it's like, "Huh?" We'll just send them back. So it made me think about that like our just entire system doesn't encourage then for it to happen in the classroom. But obviously how my teaching experience has been with students and how much just felt so much more liberating of like, I mean, it takes a lot of trust, right? To do
Well,
that with.
I like the social discipline window because it's one conceptual, it's good to like frame situations, but then two, it's also really practical. Like I said, where you can then think to yourself, like, where am I in right now? So how do I get to this other space?
Wow, I
Mhm.
love that. I love that metaphor of the window too,
Yeah.
right? Like the window, especially this season, it's a good time of year to have the window open a little bit, to be paying attention, to the cool breeze that's coming through before it gets too humid, wherever you're at. Hey, we got a great text in here, and I think Teacher Hallie, Teacher Joanna, I think Jameson, who texted it in, might love to hear what you think. Jameson from Pennsylvania texted in, I'm not an educator, but I'm attending university for a second degree. This isn't exactly the same as regulating. However, when I get home from work, I'll sit on my porch with my greyhound and reflect on the day. I won't stress, but I like to look at every day to see if I did the best I can, then see where I can adjust tomorrow. It's not focusing on the negatives, but inserting new positives. Jameson, thanks for that text. Wow.
Mhm.
And sounds a lot like regulating to me,
Yeah.
especially with your greyhound. But Teacher Joanna, Teacher Hallie, what do you think?
Well, that reflection is huge, and that was
Mhm.
actually the last part of the sequence that we developed, right? Where it was
Mhm.
regulating, connecting, centering, exploring, and reflecting. So reflection is amazing,
Mhm.
especially when Jameson's reflecting on what is and probably likely things that he's grateful for and connecting with his pal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would totally call that regulating. Like there's a whole like list or a whole bunch of things that help people regulate. And they do say pets is a big one,
Yeah.
Well,
kind
and
of.
maybe too, I know we're using the word regulation, but it's really about connection. Because remember when
Yeah.
we talked
Yeah.
about flip our
Yeah.
lid and the whole like it's
Mhm.
about connection. And so
Mhm.
how do we find ways to recenter? How do we find ways to reconnect? Reflecting is a really proven practice.
Right.
Hmm.
Connect back to self. That's what it's all
Mhm.
about. For sure.
It's Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. The number's 855-752-4842. You can call us. It's Teacher Joanna, Teacher Hallie, Educators Amplified in the house. Yeah, Wednesday. Flipping the lid, though. That one, who wants to just help me out again too with just understanding what flipping the lid means, Teacher Hallie.
Well, flipping the lid was just something where we talked about how our brain operates. So basically, when we're bugging out, when we're dysregulated, it is, and literally, you're flipping your lid. Your logical brain disconnects from your emotional part of your brain. So that's literally what it like implies and it means. And so we just talked about last week that the only way to bring back your logical and your emotional brain when you flipped your lid is through oxygen. So that's why we talk about breathing, or I'm sure petting a dog, things that just help calm you. Whatever that may be is what's gonna help you, like, not be in the space of flipping your lid.
And I want to be really clear that the things that Hallie and I are talking about aren't necessarily some like really wild extreme Zen school.
Mm,
These
No.
are just it's a different structure and strategy that can work in a traditional structure. So
Mhm.
sometimes I worry that people hear our stuff and are like, "Oh yeah, of course, you could maybe do that in this small space and this, you know, on the side way." And no, we really can look at how are we either contributing to dysregulation, or how are we supporting the regulation of the nervous system in our schools through our daily routines, through our practices, and quite frankly, through our philosophy? Because, that's part of it. Like, this is all rooted in a philosophy for Hallie and I, that stress drives behavior instead of behavior is a choice. Behavior is a choice is, Lacey, why did you show up today crying? You know you ain't supposed to show up here and be crying. Why'd you do that? Okay, that's the lens of behavior is a choice. Stress drives behavior is like, oh gosh, Lacey's crying. She's got a nervous system reset going on right now. Something must have happened. How do we connect her back?
Man, Johnny
I love,
Lupinacci.
yeah, a couple of shout outs. Heather Hansen, definitely vibing with the window, right? Yes, 2 and 4 are so
Hey.
prominent in schools. And then also, Heather says teacher Joanna and teacher Hallie are always about power with. So teacher, so Hallie or Heather Hansen out there, showing some love, and I couldn't agree with her more. I love this. Can you, just before we go to break, right? This is powerful. Can we go back over? So Heather talked about 2 and 4 being prominent in school. Can you just recap that window metaphor and the 4 quadrants?
Yeah, well, again, the social discipline window has 4 pieces. One is 2, which means you are doing things like to kids. That's when we're like, here's the punishment. This is what I'm going to do to you.
Yeah.
There's 4, which is very permissive, which is like, here's I'm going to do for you. Like, oh, this kid doesn't really like to write. I guess I can write all these things for him. And then there's neglect, and that's just where you're ignoring, you're not dealing with, a lot of times that's when you're really just overwhelmed yourself. And then there's and that's how do we accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish together. And that's where learning happens, particularly with adolescents. It's very important for them to feel that they have choice and power and are equals. And that social discipline window, I'm telling you, is probably the most helpful to me as a parent, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, for some reason I wasn't 2 and 4 in the classroom too much, but at home, oh yeah, I'm 2 and 4 in sometimes. And I really, and it's because there's a whole different set of societal expectations that go with that, right? And like what parenting is. So I see it in parenting and I see it in teaching. But yes, in teaching, and actually, I'll criticize some of the tools that we're supposed to use actually put us in the 2 and the 4 box. When I do think about those online grading systems, particularly at the secondary level, I'm like, that's a huge 2 and 4. That is not with. And I see that cause so many issues. But right, it's like I don't know how we're working with our student when then they're mad because this alert goes out to their parents. So then it's like 2. And then, sometimes teachers feel like they got to plug things in just to make it make sense. And so then that's 4.
Teacher Hallie, teacher Joanna, Educators Amplified, Busted Pencils, Fully Leaded Education Talk. Yeah, one more time. We're going to talk more and more with our 2 favorite teachers right when we get back. Johnny, where did you see that Heather Hansen thing?
In the comments. I cut it and pasted into our chat too, so that we could see it coming. Yeah, they come across in the comments. So there's people, comments, and recording across the
top.
Okay.
Sometimes they come in the comments. That's why it's good to co-host, because I can man those when we're talking, and it'll just be like click, 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 and see what's happening.
Any thoughts on direction or something new from here?
Well, and isn't it then the closing?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
you're coming up in the closing, so I think that always though, and not that we're not doing this, but okay, so where do we go from here?
Okay.
20 seconds.
In 20 seconds.
Where do we go from here in 12 seconds?
Right.
In 10 seconds.
Well, like I said, I think I know which I have a direction I can feel a little bit.
Okay.
That's our
Floating down the clouds, giving up the fight. A voice is calling out. I'm walking into the light.
You know what? Wednesday night, you're always walking into the light. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educators amplified in the house. Teacher Joanna, teacher Hallie. Everything social, emotional. Just in case people are like, what are they talking about? Regulation stuff. Well, if social emotional learning and realizing that the social and emotional is a reality, and if we don't deal with that, in fact, I like the way we're talking about this because it's it's not just how do we help the students, but who we are as teachers when we enter the space where we are socially, emotionally, how we're feeling, how the kids are. You bring that all together. Teacher Joanna, I'm feeling like I'm starting to become a good student.
Well, again, you've always been a good student. Everybody is. But something that comes to mind is how when we talk about this kind of stuff too, you really have to practice it yourself first before you can, expect it of others. And so that is something that I really advocate for is for teachers to be able to experience and have opportunities to develop their knowledge base and practice in these areas. And that's why I think that the workplace should support their own regulation and well-being, because you can't, again, it's the whole like you can't give it if you don't have it. So something really important is, and so that's why, hey, if you feel like you're growing, Tim, yay, that's what we want, right? Or that's what we hope to empower people, right? To empower themselves with these concepts of like, where am I at that I'm not bad, that I am just a human. I don't even know if I'd call it social emotional. I never did or do.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is like our brain and body. This is how humans work.
Yeah, I'll add to that, I think it's kind of like either in the 2 or 4 window to think like, okay, so teacher Hallie and teacher Joanna are talking about these concepts. And so now I like get them. And so like now we should just like teach them. Like I think that's kind of what we do in our system is that like we learn a new concept and then we're like, oh, I'll just go teach it. We're so much about this regulation and what we're about is like just increasing awareness for yourself. Like sure you might whatever. Joanna would always say this and it always sticks out to me. There's a difference between knowing and doing.
Yep.
And so we're really good at the knowing part in our school. How do we get to the doing? And in order to get there, I'm always like, you've got to apply it to yourself first. And so take time, those that are listening, Tim and Johnny, even myself, this is about like when we are dysregulating, you're noticing it. You're aware of it. You're not like, what do I do now? And judging yourself and being hypercritical. It's more of like, here I am. What level am I at? How can I bring myself down? Or just being kind to yourself. Like tonight might be the night where I'm chilling at an 8. It doesn't mean I have to live there forever. It means that sometimes, really crappy things happen and we're going to feel bad sometimes, and so it's kind of like you got to play around with it. Like to kids, we give them Play-Doh. To adults, we give them regulation.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. I mean, I feel like that's such a good reminder for all of us here, but for listener out there, these are useful tools that I think teacher Joanna said before, like we don't have to be in the perfect place to practice. And I love that you said practice it because I think sometimes we just think teaching is just this gift, right? That people are predisposed to. But teachers, you can find your vibe, your voice, and you can practice, especially as we go into the sort of off season, right? We can reinvent ourselves. We can reflect on, what can be, what's possible, and we can practice these things. You know what else we can do? If you're in Madison, we can all get together and we can have a brew or we could have something else like a glass of wine, or, they have amazing soda. I know Tim and I shared one of those when we were at the Monaco Brewing Company. Busted Pencils is sponsored by the Monaco Brewing Company, who sued the state of Wisconsin to end its parasitic voucher system that hurts public schools. Monaco Brewing Company is making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out MonacoBrewingCompany.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer.
Nice. Yeah, like you point out too, Johnny. Yeah, good soda pop. Whatever you call it, pop, soda, cola, or something like that.
Have a couple of pops with the fellas and the great gals in your community. Just have a few pops at the Monaco Brewing Company.
Oh, Johnny too. And just remember, Scotty Summer, there will be a code tonight. Top of the hour, 7:00. Making sure everybody's there, doing the Scotty Summer there. Busted Pencils, fully leaded, 855-752-4842. Where do we go from here, you two?
Well, I want to stress that again, this isn't just ways we don't have to just leave it at like there's ways to become more regulated. We can really look at how schooling can support and expand and encourage regulation, and that could include focusing on the adults. And how I said, it's really important that teachers feel, experience, and get to practice this. It means looking at our environments in school in terms of like crowdedness, not crowdedness, noise, how, things run smoothly or not. Our policies, do our policies generate regulation or do they create dysregulation? Our students always commented on so many policies that dysregulated them further, things they worried about in terms of, again, how electronic grading worked or student fees and like threats to not be able to attend dances and things like that. Like some of our policies that we think are helpful were actually pretty harmful. A philosophy that stress drives behavior throughout the school, not just in teacher Joanna's class, but the premise that we're going to operate from. And then also going back to several weeks ago, that focus on all domains of learning. If we did that, we'd have that built in. The focusing on all those domains of learning brings that balance in. And it's that balance. What is regulation? It's balance.
Teacher Joanna, Teacher Hallie, thanks for busting pencils with, not 2 and 4, but with
yeah.
us here. It's my favorite day of the week. It's Wednesday. Teacher Hallie, Teacher Joanna, Tim, we get to chop it up. Listener, join us for the rest of the week. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time. Let's go.
Whoop, whoop. Woo!
There we go.